Hi, I'm Julia Tybel for CUTV, and I'm here today with Samantha McDermott, who is an alum, class of 1994, and she is the Chief Marketing Officer of a law firm on the West Coast called Stradling. Thank you so much for being here today, Samantha.
Oh, it's great to be here, Julia.
So could you tell us a little bit about your experience here at Colgate? I know you were involved in lots of different things, including CUTV. So if you could tell us a little bit about that, that would be great.
Definitely. So as I was telling you literally before the camera started rolling, I started on campus here. I was involved in sports, and I was recruited to participate on the track team. I got injured my freshman year, and a friend of mine had said, you know what, I'm thinking about reviving our campus TV station. Do you want to help me out? And I said, absolutely. At that time, it had pretty much been dark for about 10 years, and I was so excited. I said, I want to stay connected to sports. What does that look like? So I went to the sports information department because we didn't have any cameras, we had no equipment, no gear.
There was none of that at CUTV?
Very, very old and very limited. And so my friend was working on, his angle within the campus, and I thought, let me go back to the sports folks and find out what they need. And so I went to the sports information department and I said, look, would it be helpful for you if we taped the games, the big games, that you're really focused on from a statistician perspective? And they said, you know what, it actually would. I said, great, do you have some money in your budget? Because we need to get some cameras. And that's when it all kind of kicked off for me.
Great, so I was talking to you before, and you were saying that you would go to some of the games and record them and also kind of interview the players?
Yes,
or the fans?
We did.
Okay.
A little bit of everything. We shot all the games from start to finish, and then we had a show here. Basically, it was devoted to sports. So it was all the sports highlights.
So it was like a talk show?
It was not a talk show. It was actually really just the highlights. So
okay.
Imagine back then, one person. Hey, here's the highlights from this last football game. This is what we did with the hockey team, field hockey, you name it. And we had really kind of a variety show from the sports perspective. And then we started a music program, and it just kind of mushroomed from there. A little bit of news, specific when we had big time speakers come into town like Mike Dukakis, Andy Rooney.
Andy Rooney came here?
Yeah, he came here.
Wow.
We interviewed him.
Wow.
Actually, that was a story in and of itself, which
yes.
I probably shouldn't tell you on camera. But
later.
He was a character. He was fun.
Okay, great. Could you also tell me a little bit about what it was like to be an art history major and how that did that help you at all with CUTV or anything like that?
Sure. Well, the academic experience was interesting for me because I got so involved with CUTV that I was set on, this is what I want to do. I want to go into television. I want to be professional.
Colgate doesn't really have any classes about that.
And we didn't. And so it's funny, I went to the head of the art department at the time, was John Connect. And he said, look, we have this class. There were a couple of classes. There was a motion picture television class. There were a couple of classes that looked at television from an artistic and historical perspective.
And those were under the art history department?
And they were, yeah.
Okay.
And so he said, hey, get involved with those. He encouraged me to stay connected here. I got involved with the film lab, and then I did some independent studies under him.
Oh.
And I said, hey, look, will you be my academic advisor? Because I think this is the direction I should take. I was really, honestly, debating about transferring. I was thinking about going to another school because I was
more television
worried.
stuff.
Yeah, I was worried. We didn't have a journalism major on campus. We didn't have a set communications major on campus, and that created a lot of concern for me. And so I was really looking at my options. But I'll tell you something, looking back on it, having gone through that experience and really learning by doing here, it was invaluable. Not to mention the fact that we have a lot of alumni who are in television.
That actually brings me to my next question.
And
your first internship. Tell everyone about your first internship and how you got that, because that's a really great story.
Well, this thanks to Career Services. I'll tell you, I don't know if you've been to Spear Hall yet or not. They were really amazing. They said, listen, I went in as a freshman. I said, this is what I want to do. I said, can I get an internship? I don't have an uncle or an aunt. I know nobody in my family is involved in television. My mom was an accountant. My dad was a scientist. They thought I was the crazy kid. How did we have that kid? But I went to Spear Hall and I said, look, this is really what I want to do. And they were very honest with me. They said, we don't typically give internship opportunities at that time to freshmen, really focused on sophomores and juniors. However, you're so excited about this and so enthused. Here's a company in New Jersey that just put in a request for an intern. And they were alums, and they were involved with CUTV. I said, you've got to be kidding me. It was great. So back then, there was no internet. I hate to say it, or it was very, very new. We didn't have email. We didn't communicate in the same way we do now. So I wrote him a letter. I put a stamp on it, sent it. heard back from them. They said, we'd love to meet with you. I met with them during a break, and we just connected. They said, you know what, we were really looking for somebody who was a little bit older, who had a little more experience, but the reality is, you're involved with CUTV. That's what we had started when we were on campus, and we heard that it just didn't take off, and now you guys are back there doing more. We want to help. You get the job.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, it's truly Colgate. I mean, it really is this environment. It was a combination of a great advisor in John Connect, to the career services folks, to the alumni connections. All of those played an incredibly huge role. You know, and you just need, opportunities exist in people, right? You only need one person who says, I believe in you, I'm willing to give you a try, because I was in the same shoes you were.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, if you could tell us also a little bit more, how were you able to get your first full-time job out of Colgate?
It was one of those things where I went back to career services, and I said, look, this is what I want. They said, I know. You again, right?
You again.
But they said, listen, here's the thing, would you be open? And I was listening, okay, to getting involved in the industry, but in a slightly different way. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, we had this company out of Florida reach out to us. They're looking to hire somebody for media sales. I know it's not production. I know it's not exactly what you want to be doing, but you'll be calling on news directors and other people around the country. Again, it's kind of different. Would you be open? And I said, you know what, I would. Why not? So I did. I went down, I interviewed with this company out of Orlando and got the job. And it was not exactly what I wanted, I'll be honest with you, but I learned a ton. And it was television news sales. I went to a lot of conferences. I worked my tail off. These people were really, really hard. High turnover rate, I'll be honest with you. It's one of those companies, but I learned a lot. And then my first television job came when I said, no, I really want to get back into production. So I took out the newspaper. They had classified ads back in those days. I flipped through the Sunday paper and I said, oh my gosh, there's an ad. They're looking for a reporter. And I recognized the name of the guy who was on the ad. His name was Barrett Lester. He was the guy that started CUTV. He was older than the production company people. I'm like, no way, I'd never met him, but they told me all about him. And I said, I have to apply for this job.
That's like a ridiculous coincidence, isn't it?
It was crazy. Orlando to Boston,
right.
right? I mean, it was crazy. And so I did. I wrote him a letter, right? I sent my resume, and I heard back, and he said, you know what? We'd love to have you come up. You don't have the experience we're looking for. We actually want somebody who's been in television for a little while. We're really looking for somebody with true experience, but you're welcome to come up and interview. And by the way, he goes, I'm thrilled to hear you're involved with CUTV. I love your enthusiasm. I have to recuse myself from this interview process because I'm already biased. You know, you already went to Colgate, you're a CUTV, you know, that whole thing. And I said, okay, I understand. He said, so you're interviewing with this person, this person, and this person, people that I just didn't know. But the reality was he gave me a try.
And you might not have gotten that try if it wasn't for the Colgate and CUTV connection.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it worked out well. I actually got the job.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's so great that it worked out. So I did see on your LinkedIn that you interviewed some pretty well-known people in Boston when you were a reporter there. Can you tell me a little bit about your most interesting experience working as a reporter in Boston?
Well, I'll tell you, it was one of those things where you have to learn how to be aggressive and be willing to hear no. You know, there are people that just don't want to be interviewed.
Right.
And so as a reporter in Boston, I mean, it was a small cable station, so we were up against a lot of the very big, you know, what they call designated, the big DMA, the big O&O stations, like the NBCs, the CBS.
Right,
so
right.
we were sticking the mic and they're trying to, you know, but that was it. It was just a matter of just putting yourself out there and trying. And there were some pretty interesting things. We actually created a series that we were able to get syndicated through the other cable networks throughout the nation. And that required a lot of interesting, again, skills that I had acquired through sales.
Liberal arts. Oh, and sales, right.
And liberal arts. And it goes back to your other question. You said, hey, art history. Kind of a far cry from TV news, not really marketing. What's the story there? I just loved it. It's something I really enjoy doing. And I'll tell you something, a liberal arts degree, regardless of which direction you choose, is going to serve you well. Because you need to learn how to write, you need to learn how to read, and you need to learn how to communicate. And those are the three fundamental skills.
Right. So what do you look for when you're hiring someone? I know this kind of jumps ahead to your career now, which we can get to, but what are some of the key things? Because you were saying that doesn't really matter as much what you major in, especially coming from Colgate.
Well, from my perspective, I look at, does this person have initiative? Do they have regard for themselves and for me, for that matter? Are they showing up on time? Did they put a comb through their hair? You know, very basic things, but then it goes back to, I'll tell you a great story, my brother-in-law, who is in charge of hiring a ton of people for this technology company, he says, listen, I get tons of interviews, tons of resumes, tons of people who knock on my door. If they have a mistake on their resume, I toss it out. So it's just, and that's just, it's attention to detail. It says, I care. You know, so it's the things that you say without necessarily saying them will get you that first introduction, that first opportunity to meet with somebody.
That's definitely good to know. I think people underestimate attention to detail. It's so important, and it's good to hear that that can go a long way if you're detail oriented. So kind of going back to that, how did you end up from going from television to becoming the chief marketing officer of a law firm?
Really, this was a result of having a network. I went to a networking event. I was in a place where I was traveling every week, representing clients, you know, some global...
In television?
No, actually at this point I had left television from a full-time perspective, so I had spent about 3 years full-time, and then I moved to California, and I got a job where I was a freelance reporter. And it was great. It was a couple days a week, but I realized that that was probably not the direction that I wanted to take. And so one thing led to another. I started representing companies at trade shows, presenting on their behalf, you know, becoming an extension of their marketing teams. And it kind of evolved, so I used a lot of my production background, my public speaking, and started doing a lot of different projects for companies like Samantha and Intel and Toshiba, AT&T, a lot of cultural training that came much later.
Was this when you started your own marketing company?
My own marketing consulting practice. And so, but then I started meeting a lot of people along the way, and I got involved in the business community. And I realized at that particular juncture, I had a parent that wasn't well, and so I said, you know, I'm traveling a lot for work. I need to really see if I can create some stable environment, do something from a full-time perspective, and I just started putting my energy in that direction. I bumped into somebody totally by chance at a networking event who said, have you ever considered? I said, what? Considered going in-house full-time. I know at that point I was consulting to a lot of law firms, accounting, professional services. And I said, I really hadn't, but tell me. He said, I'm the interim CMO of this company. I'm looking for my replacement. You know what, I'll put my resume in. And that's how it started. And so I tell you, you cannot underestimate the value of your network and just connecting with people.
That's amazing to hear, because from what in my research to become a chief marketing officer, the classic path is kind of to start with being an assistant marketing officer and then kind of like work your way up from that.
Actually, there is truth in that.
Okay.
Let me be honest, my path was not classic, and it was not an easy one, right? I mean, so if you really are clear in what you want, go for it. I would say the straight line is going to be your best friend. It's going to be a lot easier. I had a lot of interests, a lot of different things that I wanted to do, and I was one of those people that was just open. You know, I said yes to pretty much everything. Okay, I'll try that. Sure, I'll try that. Yeah, I could probably help you with that. And I learned a lot and had a lot of good resources and mentors along the way.
Wow, that's all really good. Thank you so much for sharing all of your experience. This has been great. I've learned a lot from you, and thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story about your career and Colgate, especially CUTV. So thank you so much, Samantha.
You're welcome.
For CUTV, I'm Julia, and thank you for watching.